Randall Realtors in Westerly, Rhode Island.
And we're about to embark on our 20-minute real estate briefing for this week, December 16th, 2002.
No, 2020.
No, it's a standard
The
joke.
lousy year of 2020.
Yeah, really, huh? But we are going to be spending the next 20 minutes talking about real estate. And before we begin, I think we've got Emma and Denise in the Outward Bound audience. We wanted to talk a little bit about what led us up to this point. And we were talking earlier about a number of years ago, we did buyer seminars here out of the office. It was a thing in those days.
Yeah, we had buyers come in, we talked to them for an hour, telling them what they needed to do, how they would get ready to become buyers. It went off quite well.
Oh, they liked it.
Yeah,
They liked it.
it went off quite well. We had a couple of buyers actually buy houses out of it.
Yeah.
And then we discovered that they liked it a lot better when we just had conversations with them and weren't just being like the professional instructors or professors.
I enjoyed that part, by the way.
Yes.
Which comes as no surprise to anybody, even as total strangers. But we did have also to the point we had a very organized presentation, as you would expect with something like that, broken down into steps. But that survey that Denise is alluding to was the answers were coming back, the question, what did you like the most out of it, or fill in the blank? And it was, we enjoyed the part where during the break, talking to somebody, and we enjoyed afterwards.
Yeah.
And so tiny light bulbs started going off about that.
It's kind of like when we meet up with clients in their home or take a buyer in the car, which we don't do very much anymore, but we have an opportunity to have conversations. So our point of doing this is to have a conversation, not necessarily to be professors of real estate. I know you want to be, but we can't. So welcome to our 20-minute real estate briefing.
Yes, I'm Professor Clark.
Today we're going to do, are you ready to sell?
But before we do that,
please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Do we have an Instagram account? I don't think we do yet, but we will get one. Tell your friends about us, like us, share us. Our email address is down at the bottom of the screen. You can see it there. So email us any questions. While we're talking, if you have a question, please feel free to use the box, or if you chat box, or if you want to show your face, you can raise your hand. And if you're on Facebook, I do have the Facebook Live chat box going as well. So you can just send us a message that way, and we'll try to get to your answers today if that's possible. If we run out of time, we'll address them next week.
That's right.
Okay.
So just wave those hands. That would require the live camera on the other side of the Zoom meeting. But the idea is, and I guess I can double back a little bit on what we're doing, this format, is that we have the topic for this week, but we also will take questions from the floor, from the audience, and that's going to steer these things, because the idea is that using that analogy about driving clients to a house.
We said this already.
We did, but the idea is that you don't tell them, wait a minute, no, don't ask that question.
No,
we're not at the house yet. So interrupt if you choose to. And if we like the question,
we'd like you to interrupt.
Because we're just stem winding. Okay. Are you ready to sell?
I am. Are you ready to sell? So one of the reasons that you want to bring a professional into your house when you're trying to decide about selling is to get an objective view of your property. We want somebody who hasn't lived in your house to come in and take a look around and point out the good things, but also point out the things that may or may not need some improvement, or that may or may not increase your value or marketability.
Yeah, that objective thing is easy to underrate the value of it. I mean, when was the last time you tried to write a resume? They're always tough if you're too close. And living in the house for a year or 30 years, talk about too close, you will not see it as a total stranger would. And your agent is all about seeing the house as the total stranger is, because he or she is going to ask you about what you like about the house and things like that. But you know that he's the guy to tell you what the stranger would be looking at.
And we do want to know what you like about the house, because that whatever caused you to buy the house or made you comfortable in the house is definitely going to help us sell it. But
including the giant arborvitaes, which is one of my favorite examples of what happens with sellers. You buy a house, you love the arborvitaes because they came with the house, and now the agent shows up 20 years later and you can't see the house. The arborvitaes
they're so big.
Gigantic,
This is so big, yeah. Or plants too close to the house.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
you know, they just smother the front of the house. Mature, we call those mature plantings.
Yes, yes, we call it overgrowing.
Yes,
like
that's overgrown. That means they're old.
So it's a question of seeing the house for the arborvitaes,
Yeah,
as opposed to the forest for the trees.
exactly. That's a point. Good
That's a
point.
clever thing.
That was clever. That was clever. So having an agent come to your house and be objective about the property and make some suggestions about what will make it more marketable or maybe get you more money is probably the first thing you should be doing when you're deciding you might want to sell. But there are impressions that we get. So obviously the first impression is when we're driving to the house, what's your neighborhood like?
That's the whole thing, the first impression. And you know, it's funny about first impressions. It's everybody gets it. Oh, first impressions count. But again, if you live in your house, even when you come home tomorrow, it's hard to get the first impression.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you really can't do much about your neighbor's yard if he's got an abandoned car in it and all that stuff. You really can't, or a refrigerator. You really can't do much about that, but you need to be aware of it because it will affect people who are coming to your house's opinion as they're coming in. Hopefully your house will be like, wow, and then that will make that minimize and go away. So the second impression is obviously when they pull in your driveway. So you want to make sure that you don't have overgrown arborvitaes and that you have a good focal point when people pull into your driveway. Seasonally, that can be an issue sometimes. I mean, if you're going to list your house today and we have a snowstorm coming tomorrow, there's things you have to do that, you know, aren't going to be perfect, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be attractive for the moment.
Or not bad.
Exactly. Not bad is good too.
Yeah, yeah, because it's the kind of thing that you have that one chance to make a first impression, and almost every seller we talk to will have a problem with time and money, because you can make a list, anybody can do that, how to improve your house, but hardly anybody has the time and money to do everything.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And there are things an agent may suggest to you that you just aren't comfortable with doing, and that's fine. We actually do sell houses that don't make good impressions, and they still sell. So that doesn't mean you can't sell your house. It's just,
it's bang for the buck is what you're looking for on the list.
It is. So, you know, if you're in a position to get somebody in early in the process and have them go through the house with an objective eye, some of the things that we say is less is more. When we go into a house and you have collections around the house or a lot of photos around the house, my go-to thing to say is, I'm going to sell your house. So pack. And also depersonalize, because it's distracting.
Yeah. And, you know, getting that list is, from the agent's perspective, I enjoy that, because it's a matter of literally driving up, walking up the sidewalk or whatever you have for a walkway, and noting the things. And it's, you know, the idea is, hey, you can only do one thing. Well, if the mailbox is on the lawn, the one thing would probably be put the mailbox right. So the idea is that it's about guiding perception.
The perfect example is that in my house, I've lived there for a while, and one of my rugs in one of my bedrooms has a small hole by the door where the cat tried to get out, got stuck in there, tried to get out, and the rug is perfectly good shape except for that little teeny hole.
Tried to dig through the floor?
He tried to dig to get out the door. But if you're going to sell your house, if I were going to sell my house, it'd be a good idea for me to replace that rug. But if I can't replace the rug, if I'm not in the position to replace the rug, I need to be aware that it's going to be something that buyers are going to ask about. Or you had a leak in the roof and you fixed the roof, but you didn't repair the ceiling. So those are things that when we walk around, we're going to say, what's that stain on the ceiling? And then you're going to tell us, well, that happened 10 years ago. I fixed the roof. But now we're going to ask you to paint that, or at least put it in the disclosures so that the buyers, potential buyers, know that the problem was handled. I can tell you that even if you tell them it's been handled, when the inspector comes, and that's another show, but when the inspector comes, he's going to put a moisture meter up there just to make sure it's not still leaking. Yep. So what else do we recommend they do?
Well, along those lines of getting into the heads of the buyer for the benefit of the seller would be, I'm a big fan of no mysteries. Now, worn out carpets, squeaking doors are understandable. Everybody's seen those. Something that doesn't belong there, like you say, a stain on the ceiling is a mystery. So eliminate the mysteries after you get the mailbox back on the lawn. And look at the house that way, because it's not like they are going to be doing inspections, and you want that, but you want to give them a chance to like the house.
Yes, absolutely. You know, it is about the first impression. It really is when you walk into the house. So another thing that we advise is always make sure that you have working light bulbs in every place that there's a light in the house, because you want to be able to illuminate all of the parts in the house that you want people to see.
Like the cellar stairs.
Like the cellar stairs. Most definitely.
I was downstairs once doing that because the lights weren't, the bulb was out. Just like
thank God for cell phones now. We have that flashlight on the cell phones. A lot of times we need to use that when we're in houses that have, you know, dark corners or old staircases where, you know, you got to pull the chain when you're going down the stairs and nobody told you to go look for the chain. So that happens too, and there's not a lot we can do about that. But if you do have lights, make sure the light bulbs work.
That's a good point, Denise. The idea of you still have to live there. If you're the seller, if we're talking to you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, then we know you still got to live there. Because ideally you just get everything out and you have an empty house and you stage it and make it look real nice, but that's not real. So it's going to be a balance point of being able to live there, but having it ready for a buyer at a relatively short notice. Nobody's going to knock on the door and say, let me in, I need to see this house. But
in this market, we're getting calls that people want to go see the house. You know, I'm in town, can I come today? So, you know, you do need a plan for if you can. I mean, some people have children and pets and they can't do quick showings, and we always accommodate those. But if you're available to do a quick showing, you know, you need to have a plan for where you're putting the clothes that were sitting on the couch that were waiting to be folded, or, you know, you hide it.
Really, totally.
People don't mind seeing a laundry basket full of clothes in a closet. They do mind seeing it on the couch.
Yeah. Dishes, same thing.
Yeah. Dirty dishes, stick them in the dishwasher, or put them in the refrigerator somewhere just to get them out of the way. But that is when you get to showings, which is also another conversation we'll do in upcoming weeks. But right now we're talking about getting ready for selling, and this is a bigger topic than this. So we're just talking to you about the initial appointment. Once you've decided that you do in fact want to sell your house, then you have a sit down with your agent and you discuss price and you discuss what the company has to offer and what they have to offer. And that's when you will talk about paperwork and all the rest of it, because there is quite a bit of paperwork you need to fill out. Actually, typically when I go to a listing appointment, I do bring the disclosures so you know the kind of things that people want to know about. Even if you're not going to hire me at that moment, you know what people want to know when they're going to come to your house.
Yeah, and you know, with these, a lot of what we're doing here is that conversation in the
Go ahead.
Are we really 19 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Emma, do you have a question? Oh, I was putting her on the spot because the picture's right there, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Thank you we've got 4 people and we are only counting 3. Or is that counting us?
She said we answered a lot of her questions already.
Oh, okay. Well, should we make
I guess we're good at this.
Great. Thanks for the jinx. Well, I was going to say something about we're talking to a seller out there. Next week we'll be talking to buyers, I'm sure, and that kind of thing. But when it comes to sellers and the rather daunting prospect of selling a house, keep in mind that everybody's been on both sides of the table. So when you're trying to figure out how to get the house ready for a buyer, imagine being a buyer. If you're selling a house, then chances are you kind of bought it once.
Yeah.
So put that hat on or those glasses on, because that's all your agent will help you do, is to guide you to see it the way it needs to be seen to make it ready. So what do we have for next week? Do we know off the top of our collective heads? No,
I wish I had written it down.
Yeah.
I don't know, but we will put it out there on Facebook and on Zoom and let you know what we're going to be discussing next week. Please, again, like us, share us, tell your friends and
Tell your
neighbors
friends,
about
yeah.
us, and we'll see you next week.
You should tell your friends about it.
Absolutely.
Because,
Thank you.
Oh, I have to stop talking
Yeah,
now?
well, it's over 20 minutes and people have to go to dinner.
Okay.
Okay.
See you next week.
See you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Chat. We have 2 chats.